Hi there, welcome to this build of the Gladiator. Now the Gladiator is a lovely vintage model that first appeared in air trails in March 1941, and it's a 67-inch wingspan with a lovely tip dihedral and a lovely long fuselage. Now we're building this from a great set of plans that you can get from the Outer Zone website for free, and if you have a look in the description below this video you'll find a link where you can download them. Now up till now we've built the wings, these lovely tip dihedral wings, and in the last video we got these two really nice fuselage sides completed, an identical pair, and as I said it's a lovely long fuselage. There is a downside though, the CG is about here, where then we've got this huge expanse going down the back there, so it's going to be an interesting job getting this to balance at the end of the day. But what we're going to do in this video is we're going to pull these fuselage sides together, we're going to get them joined together so we've got the basic structure, the basic skeleton of the fuselage. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this takes shape. Now, before we actually set this up and start to join it together, which is quite a simple process because essentially it's only joined together with a firewall and then 1/4 inch square balsa all the way along. But before we can do that, there's a couple of things that we need to do, and we'll have a closer look at the plans. Right, well the first thing we need to do is think about the engine mountings, and what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using this 3/4 inch by 1/2 inch beech hardwood, ideal for the job, and I'm going to be gluing that on the inside of the fuselage sides. Now there's a couple of things to note here. I'm only going to be putting in 1/2 inch wide, and so that's narrower than shown on the plans, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm not actually going to attach the engine to these bearers. I'm going to be putting on a metal plate and I'm going to have the engine mounted in the metal plate. It will make it a lot easier to take out if I want to put in a different engine. I can just make up a new plate rather than trying to alter the wood structure. So that's the one thing. Now the second thing about these engine bearers, on the plans it shows them just coming up to here to the firewall, which is actually really short. So what I'm going to do is this is a 1 foot length, 12 inch, I'm going to cut it in half and I'm going to bring them back a little bit further just to give them a little bit more strength, and they'll be against the hardwood that we've already put in the fuselage sides, and we can see that there. So I'm going to do that, but I also need to be mindful that if I'm putting a plate in, I need to have these slightly lower down to account for the thickness of the plate, which will be about 3 mm 1/8, because we want to retain the engine on the centre line. So that's the first thing we're going to do. I need to make up the firewall. On the plans here it says it's 1/8 ply. Hopefully if I come around here, you can see it's 1/8 ply shown on the plans, which is great. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to make it up out of 1/4 inch ply. I'm going to make it a little bit thicker, and I'm going to then make a hole in this firewall so that I can put ballast weight through, I can put the battery through, because we want to get as much weight up into the nose as possible, and it's likely that we are going to have to add some lead, and if we're going to add it, it wants to be as far forward as possible. So by making this firewall thicker, it allows us to comfortably put a hole in there for access. I also need to bend up the landing gear. So I'm going to get on and do that now. I've got some 1/4 inch ply here, and we've got the bearers, and I've got my music wire. So I'm going to crack on and do this, and we'll have a look once we've got that done. Right, well I've really been cracking on with this now, and I cut that piece of beech in half, and this is where I'm going to mount that, and I'm going to glue that in a second with some epoxy. I'm not going to have it going all the way forward to the nose. There's a little bit of a gap there, and I'll fill that with balsa, and it'll just make a nicer finish. It doesn't need to be beech all the way, and it gives us a little bit longer at the back here. I might just take off that point actually, just blunt that a little bit. But you can see I've marked on here where it goes, and as I said, I've set it down slightly from the centre line, just the thickness of this aluminium plate, which I may use, but it's going to be the thickness I'll use, but I may use to mount the engine, so that will go on like that. And I've also made up the firewall, and I've had to cut out some slots. This is the 1/4 inch, and I've had to cut out the slots just so that that will mount on there like that. So we've got that done. We're almost ready to start gluing stuff together. Just one point, there is a hole here that needs to go 3/16 I think it is for a dowel for the rubber bands to come round, another one there. But what I will do, particularly this one, because it's going through 2 lots of hardwood, I will drill that once I've got this glued on here, because and before I join the fuselage sides together, because it will be easier to do it on the bench drill, and if I've got a whole fuselage that will make it difficult, so I'll do that before I join the sides together. I've also worked out how many cross pieces of hard 1/4 inch balsa I need to start fixing the fuselage sides together, to join them together, and there's actually 7. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I think 7 to start with anyway. And because this section here of the fuselage is parallel, the 2 sides join together nice and parallel, and it only starts to taper in from this point going back. So what I've done is I've used the firewall as a guide, and I've made sure that all of my cross pieces match up or line up with the firewall, so they're all the correct length, so we get everything nice and consistent when we start to glue these sides together. We're not cutting them separately and finding one's a little bit longer and we end up with our fuselage side coming in a bit or something. So I'll get those glued on there now, and I also need to bend up the landing gear and then work out where it's going to go on here and how we can cut a hole in big enough to get a battery pack through there at least. Right, well, I thought I ought to just quickly show how I'm bending up the music wire for the landing gear, and this is how I always do it, and I've never had any problems. All I do is clamp it in the vise and I hit it with a hammer essentially and bend it. I have got a metal bender for bending this kind of stuff, but it puts quite nice radius, gentle radiuses on it. I'd rather get nice fairly sharp corners, not too sharp. I've never had it break. The only time I've had a piece of wire break, which was actually already bent up for a spring, it was really hardened steel and it just wasn't done right. To my mind, if it's good music wire, it should cope with this absolutely fine. So I've got it in the vise and I put the tension on and just hit it around where the bend needs to be, and just bring it over a little bit. And there we go. Now we've got the central section, which, if I just take this out, I did it quite tight, and if it put teeth mark in it, if it puts teeth marks in it, then all the better, because it will just help it grip when I glue it. So that is the section now that's going to go up the centre like that. So all we need to do now is just bend out the legs. So I know I'll get questions if I don't show this, and some people probably won't like the technique, but I have never ever had any problems with this kind of wire bending. And when it comes to doing the angles, I just use an adjustable angle like this, set square, and just make sure that we get them right. Got to watch your eye on that. But yes, so we're almost there now with this. Right, and another suggestion, when we're putting on the bits that come out horizontal for the wheels to go on, we want to get those at 90 degrees to these uprights that are going to go onto the firewall. So we can start bending them, same technique, and to see if we've got them right, we can just use a square like this, and yeah, we can see that is more or less right. So yeah, maybe just a little bit more, but you can see the process here just to get those right in the ballpark. I mean, we'll probably need to adjust it when it's on the model anyway, but there we go. We've got our basic shape now, but what I need to do is put a forward rake on this, and so I will work out how I'm going to do that. I'll probably just clamp it in the vise and then knock it that way, but I need to check it out with the firewall. And just another comment, the squares on a cutting mat like this are absolutely fantastic for making sure that you get your landing gear symmetrical. Right, I've now got the landing gear bent up, and that's how it's going to go. And you can see, actually that is the right way. It's going to go on the front of the firewall, and it's just going to point forward a little, which is good for landing, but also good because it'll take the wheels a little bit further forward, and I can change the weight of the wheels. If I want a little bit of nose weight, I can pick some really heavy wheels, or I can get some lighter wheels if I don't need it. So that's good. Now, to fix these on here, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be drilling some holes and sewing it on, and then I'm going to put on the edges some probably quarter inch spruce like that, which will help glue that into place and epoxy all the stitching. I'll then put another piece on the inside. This outside piece here will go flush with the fuselage, so it'll make a stronger bond with the firewall on the fuselage. Now, all of this is adding a little bit of extra weight, you know, the thickness of the firewall and the spruce, although that is shown on the plans. But we're not going to be nose heavy on this plane, not at all. So I don't mind adding a little bit of weight. I am still mindful about it, but adding a little bit of extra weight to get a little bit of strength and durability. We have to remember these models were built as lightweight contest models. They weren't built for durability. So that's what I'm going to do. Right, well, I feel like I'm on a bit of a roll with this now, and I'm almost ready to start setting this out to glue the fuselage sides together or bring them together. So, but we'll just have a quick look at what I've done. So we've got the engine bearers glued onto the fuselage sides, and as I said previously, I've just set these down by 1/8 of an inch so that we can put a plate on there and we still retain the engine centre line, because the centre line for the engine on the plans is shown as the bottom of this quarter inch square piece of hard balsa. So that's done. Oh, and I've also I've marked the holes, or where we need to drill the holes for the elastic band attachments that hold the wing on, and I just need to drill that, and I've marked that one as well. But that should be easy enough, do that on the bench drill. Now, I've been working on the firewall and the landing gear. You've seen the firewall, you've seen the landing gear, but I've actually drilled holes and sewn this on with some nylon cord, which is extremely strong, and I've put on some quarter inch square, I think that's actually that might be 3/16, and on the sides there, so that's flush with the edge of that, so that will give extra gluing attachment point when we glue it onto the fuselage. I've got epoxy on here on the stitching, and I've got a piece here, just a 1/8 piece, and just to stop the epoxy from running, and to keep it on the stitching there. Now, I've still got a little bit of epoxy to put on there, but I haven't done that yet. There's reasons for when I do the engine bay in a compartment, I don't want to do that bit yet, so I'm leaving that. And I've got this hole here so I can put a battery pack and any ballast that we need to add. Right, well, I'll get this hole drilled and we'll get these set up on the table. It's going to be really good to see this fuselage take shape. Right, well, I've now done a dry run and I've got the two fuselage sides set up on the bench, and I've got the cross members in, the firewall, and all clamped up, and it is ready to glue now. There are three things that we need to be really careful about when we're setting up this fuselage, and I guess this applies to any fuselage. First of all, we want to make sure that it's sitting on the bench square and it's not like that. So I've got blocks here holding the sides where it's on the top of the cabin as well as that main longeron. I've also got my squares, which I'm checking is upright on the fuselage, and that is 90 degrees to the table. That's perfect. I'm really pleased with how that's looking. And don't forget to use your eyes as well, because I find that just looking at it often throws up things that you haven't seen. But anyway, this is looking nice and square, so I'm pleased with that. So that's one thing we need to be mindful of. Now the other two things which are really critical is that the top of the cabin, because these are identical sides, remember, so we need to make sure that the top of the cabin is sat firmly and squarely on the table, because the wings are going to sit on that and we want it a nice surface. So once we've got that done, we need to make sure that the base of the tail, so this longeron here, is actually sat down square on anything at the back here. And I've propped this up, angled it and got it just right so these longerons are just sat on here nice and gently, because at the end of the day, if we get the wing saddle nice and square but we forget about the bottom end and it's like that, we could end up with the tail plane a little bit crooked. Well, we wouldn't, we'd have to kind of straighten it up. But if we can get those three things done, square, nice and flat on the table, nice and flat supported, we're on to a winner. I've got my 7 1/4-inch pieces of hard balsa going across, and I clamp those just to make sure that I get a really nice tight fit. I haven't clamped this one because I've got the firewall in here. This isn't glued yet. There's a bit of tissue on there just to remind myself it was there, so I didn't catch myself as I walked around the bench. Now there's enough flex on the front of this fuselage. I'll tell you what, let me move the camera and we'll have a look from this angle. There we go. Always nice to get a different perspective. Now the tail section down there, we're not too fussed as long as it's supported level, and because we're going to deal with that in a bit. This section of the fuselage from here to here is parallel sided, so all these cross members are the same width, length, and the same with the firewall. Now, as I said, I've got this dry clamped so I know how I'm going to do it, and there's enough flex to be able to get the firewall out. So I'm going to put epoxy on the sides, just going to spread it lightly with my fingers like that, and we can slide it into place, and then we can clamp that top and bottom. I've got a cross member somewhere, oh here it is, that then needs to be clamped into there. These cross members I'm going to CA, and as I said, I'm going to epoxy that. I've also, is it on camera? Yes it is. I've got some gussets I'm going to put in on here, and I've also made 2 more which are off camera. Are those in? Oh yeah, you can see them. I've got 2 more which are going to go up on the top here. And don't forget, with gussets, the grain needs to go across the gusset. So if it's going to go in like that, we need the grain to be going that way. So that will just provide a bit of stability, because there's not a lot stopping this from kind of twisting side to side. So I will get this glued up now, and then we'll have a look when it's done. Right, well, I've got the cross members now CA'd in place, and you can see I've taken the clamps off these. I've left this one on just because it's kind of holding the structure rigid, and I've got the firewall epoxied in place, 30-minute epoxy, and that's all clamped up now, ready for that to cure, waiting for that to cure. One thing I forgot to mention was that obviously we need to make sure that the fuselage sides are kind of level with each other, so you haven't got one further forward than the other. And a good way to do that is to use, because these are identical sides, we can put the square on there and check with these uprights that they're both at the right distance and square like that. So I mean, I obviously did that when I set this up, but I didn't specifically mention it, which I should have really. So anyway, let's wait for this to go off, cure, and we'll have a look at what it looks like and get the rear done. Well, what can I say? How cool is that? This is so nice to get together, and I'm really pleased with how it's looking and actually quite excited by it. Now what I'm going to do is just set this up to get the cross pieces in on this tail section, and so I'll set that up now. Right now I've got the fuselage set up on the bench and I'm ready to start putting all the cross pieces in, and they're going to be from 1/4 inch really soft balsa. And to set this up on the bench, I've turned it upside down so it's sitting on the top longerons, which are nice and flat and straight. So they're sat on the bench. I've got the cabin here resting on these containers, and to make sure that we're pulling in the sides of the fuselage equally and we're going to get a nice straight fuselage, I've run down these 2 straight lines, and I've done them from the cheeks here right down to the point where the fuselage finishes being parallel, because this section here is nice and parallel. It only tapers in from here on. So we've got them, as I said, on the cheeks, and they're just kissing those uprights there, just touching them. So, and if we look down and eye them up, we can see these lines are dead straight. So that means now all we have to do is measure here and here, and to make sure that they've come in together and they're nice and straight. Hopefully I've lined the camera up so you can see that this is a nice straight fuselage. So I've got one of the cross members in here, another one down there, and I'm going to start to cut the rest now and get these glued in, and we'll have a look when it's done, and hopefully it will still be nice and straight. I've also just sanded the tails of these so they fit together nice and snugly. So I'll get on now. Well, look at that. I've now got it off the bench and upright, and I've got all of these cross members in and the fuselage pulled together, and you can see, hopefully if I line it up with the camera, you can see that is coming in really nice and straight and in line with the rest of the fuselage. It really is quite exciting to get to this stage, because it's at this point that it really starts to give you an indication not only of the size of this, but how it's going to look when it's finished. And you know what? There's one thing we've got to do. We've got to get the wings on and see how it looks. So, I mean, it is at this point that you realise that you could do the slightly bigger workshop, but we have what we have. So there we go. Now if I just move that a little bit, hopefully most of that is in shot now, and you can see what a splendid bird this 1941 Gladiator is going to be when it's finished. I mean, we've still got the tailplane to build, and the tailplane is absolutely massive. I'm not sure, I might do that next, or I might mount the engine and finish off the nose and around the front of the windscreen there, but I'll have to have a think about that. But I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing this come together. I mean, this has been a really exciting build and a great set of plans, and I've really enjoyed every stage of it. So, and I can't wait now to get on and start pulling this together even more. So anyway, I hope you'll come back and see how we get on in the next video, continuing the build of this lovely 1941 Gladiator.